Andrew, thank you so much for
Sure.
sitting down. I know you're incredibly busy, growing your many companies. Thanks for being part of the Aerozone, and thank you for taking time to tell us your story. Um, let's just begin by sharing a little bit about who are you and how did you get into this world of logistics? Like, what's the story of how you find yourself in this place?
Sure. No, I appreciate the question, and thanks for putting this together. It's super,
Yeah.
super happy to be part of this. I'd remove myself from it more than just kind of what the organizations have done. So I've been very blessed, throughout my career. But I think what's really cool is like if you look at Ark really has its roots. Like Ark is our mainline logistics company, and Ark has its roots going back to like the 1950s in Cleveland. And so we kind of got this, my family has this rich history in it. My grandfather had a pickup and delivery company where he actually, like on Cargo Road in Cleveland, which is where all the cargo facility, his facility was actually on Cargo Road there, and they would pick up and deliver product for airlines, right? So they would take product and so my dad grew up in that environment, right? So his dad was, basically, did pickup and delivery in Cleveland for all the big firms like GE and all the big companies. And my dad grew up as a truck driver, basically. My dad drove a truck for 28 years. And then he ended up starting Ark Transportation. And so I was kind of brought up in the business as well. And so my life has taken on this, like, I was in computers. And so the combination of computers, technology, and logistics had kind of just been formulated through a lot of just I would say the environment I was brought up in. And so, I was going to school. I was going to be a computer scientist. I was going to be a programmer. I was in the late 90s. I was building websites. And like when you were building websites in the late 90s, it was a gold rush. It was incredible. And I was extremely young doing that. And along the way, I started working for my father on nights and weekends and just kind of loading trucks and stuff like that. And one of the operations guys didn't come in one of the days. And so I had the opportunity to kind of sit behind the desk and like start routing freight. And I always tell everybody, it was like I put the right prescription glasses on for the first time. And it was like at that point I was like, this is the digital world in reality. So this takes what you do in developing in terms of moving things around or moving data around, and this is the real component of it. And when you look and like we're in this this great room with all this stuff around us, every item has been moved hundreds of times from a raw product to a finished good to sitting here in this office place. And the beauty of it is that where we sit in the supply chain, we get to be part of it on all the different facets, right? So between all the different organizations that now kind of sit under the banner, we can take raw goods from a mine all the way to your doorstep, and that's possible only because of like my ability to somewhat stand on the shoulders of those who've gone before me, and a lot of that has to do with Cleveland because we even in the 50s we had transportation happening in Cleveland all the way till today. And so, and everything that we've done kind of stems off that logistics tree in some form or fashion. And so, yeah, I'm just extremely grateful that I've got the opportunity to participate kind of in this story, not just of what Ark is doing and how Ark helps customers along the way, no matter kind of where they are on the spectrum, but also do it in a way that promotes Cleveland. Like, we have options. We've had opportunities to maybe move or to go somewhere else. But when you look at what Cleveland has to offer, both from a resources and a talent and an infrastructure standpoint, it made it a no-brainer to just be like, no, this is who we are. It's part of our identity. And I think that's a unique thing about Cleveland is like, if you're from Cleveland, and this happens anywhere, so if you're a well-traveled individual, doesn't matter where you go, it seems, you always bump into someone who is either from Cleveland or married a girl from Cleveland. I don't know what it is, but we export people and wives apparently all over the world because pretty much anywhere I travel, that's the story I get.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we produce such high quality across both the people here are fantastic people, but then also the type of businesses. If you look at even the businesses, and while we don't have maybe all the businesses we once had in terms of the Fortune 500, you still have these incredible companies that are world renowned, whether it's General Electric or Goodyear. I mean, Sherwin-Williams. These companies are not just like it's a who's who, right, of organizations, and they're still investing in Cleveland, which makes it easy for organizations like us to say, okay, we're participating in something that that is critical to the infrastructure of not just Cleveland but also our region, outside of Cleveland. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that story. So I could see, mentally visualize, I don't know, rewind back 70, 80 years, your grandfather on Cargo Road, like the logistics world would have looked totally different. But I really like the way you told the story of, everything you look around you has moved, hundreds of times before it showed up here, whether it's raw material, finished product. What what does Ark and its family of companies do? Can you give us a sense of like what all you all do?
Yeah, so we have a couple different companies. One of them, Ark is where it all started. So Ark Transportation is a typical warehousing and freight forwarding company. So we have a big 400,000 square foot warehouse, and we have other warehouse locations all around the United States. But our headquarters is we have warehousing, so we help customers, whether it's warehousing, so we'll store their product, we'll perform kind of value-added services on their product through different sorts of brands and products we offer. And then on top of that, and this is really what Ark I would say specializes in, is the actual transportation and movement of those goods. And so we're a non-asset freight forwarder. So we own trucks in Cleveland, we own some assets in Cleveland, but generally we have partners that we work with around the world. And so if we need to do a pickup in China and a delivery in Europe somewhere, we have people that facilitate that work on our behalf. And that's how we've operated. So we operate in, I think it's like 168 countries around the world. We have, hundreds of thousands of drivers that operate under our guidance inside the United States. And at the end of the day, we provide anything from, an urgent next flight out, medical stuff, all the way through to, I'm sending out raw steel coils or something like that. So our product line pretty much can handle anything on that spectrum. And then when you think of like imports or exports, right, we're importing containers, we're exporting containers and air freight and all the stuff you would think of for global trade. And so that's kind of Ark in a nutshell. And we support, not only customers in Cleveland, but we support customers all over the nation. And predominantly it's all of our operations are housed in Cleveland. So, strategically it's really nice because when you look at it, not just Cleveland in terms of cost of living and the talent and all that, but it's kind of a unique thing that you might not jump to that conclusion right out of the gate. But when you're located in the Eastern time zone, the world, because New York and all, you kind of everything ticks off the Eastern time zone. Mm-hmm. So when you think of conversations in Europe, or you think of conversations even in China or Australia, whatever it is, the Eastern time zone really adjusts nicely to a lot of those areas. So having a lot of our people in the Eastern time zone is critical for us. In terms of communication from the mothership, so to speak. And obviously there's other offices that handle it. But that's the critical component, I would say, of Ark.
Sure.
And since then we've started software companies that provide solutions for companies like Ark Transportation to operate more efficiently, whether it's from a compliance aspect or from an internal governance aspect, but really more around the idea of helping align the resources around the globe for you. And so this comes in the form of a CTPAT solution where if you're importing or exporting goods, there's a lot of compliance requirements around CTPAT. And one of our organizations, Vroot, it supports that in a way that provides a SaaS-based solution. So the company like Sherwin-Williams can not just get their CTPAT compliance, but also maintain their audits and maintain their vendor relationships through this in a really meaningful way. Because one of the areas we saw, it was an ERP tool or vendor management tool is great, but it starts to fall down when you look at specific CTPAT related compliance and guidelines. And even when it comes to the training aspect of okay, when you receive a container in, what's the expectation? And Sherwin-Williams might not receive a lot of containers, but they've got a lot of vendors who do for them. And they've got to make sure that their vendors like Ark, right, are doing the things that allow them to stay compliant. And so we have software that allows organizations like a Sherwin-Williams or GE or you name it, right, to stay compliant with the information and with the requirements laid out by the federal government to participate in some of these global trade organizations. And then we got more companies. We can go on forever, but we have other companies we have pick and pack companies. So like a typical 3PL where if you're an e-com or you're a direct-to-consumer brand, and you're trying to get your stuff from somebody purchasing on a website to the door, you would have somebody who does that pick pack operation for you. And so we have 100 plus team members that focus around that, and we have about I think a couple 100,000 square feet of just 3PL warehousing goods. And so when you order something online, we receive the order, we pick, pack it, and we get it ready for shipping.
Got it.
And so that's a brand we have in house. It's called Shipping Pilot. And then finally, to kind of round it out, we just launched a new company called Delivered. And what Delivered provides nationwide parcel delivery. So in addition to what you might see with like a FedEx or UPS, where they provide nationwide delivery, Delivered would be an option outside of those two, and it allows us to kind of complete the life cycle of the shipment. So if you think about how I just explained it, right, we can take raw goods, or we can take finished goods in China, or finished goods in wherever, Vietnam, or finished goods in Georgia, right, and we can walk them through both from either raw goods or finished goods all the way to a 3PL fulfillment to delivery to the doorstep. And so as an organization, we tried to complete kind of the life cycle of a product. And while it works for some, we're not expecting someone to go raw goods to doorstep with us, but our ability to provide value add to our customers along the way is kind of the reason why we've added these components, is because our customers appreciate the way we treat them, right? We have some core values that are non-negotiable for us, and they're basic, right? They're not too philosophical. It's really just like what I would say is almost like Cleveland-based philosophy, right? Like do right.
Like that Cleveland-based philosophy.
Yeah, do right by others, right? Treat others the way you would want to be treated. Like those sort of principles that kind of guide who we are as a community.
Sure.
And that's how we treat our customers, and people appreciate that. Like it's not a shocking result that people want to be treated well. And they want to be treated like they're valued and all those things. So a lot of what we have done, and a lot of the other companies we've built along the way, are really just fulfilling a need that our current customers had. And so it wasn't this big leap of faith for us to do a lot of these things. It was more of like a natural evolution of building products, or building, what we would call them internal products, for our customers, because they appreciate the baseline service and customer support they receive along the way. And so that's it in a high level overview of what we do. So pretty much anywhere on that spectrum, whether it's deconsolidating a container or whatever it might be, that's kind of where we live in the world of logistics.
But that's amazing. It really sounds like from soup to nuts, from end to end, the entire experience. You have, a company, sounds like your grandfather started it, and, slowly you've built on that legacy, you've built on that foundation, added elements to it. And that sounds like you had a distinct skill set, more in the technology orientation, that's added to this legacy that your family started.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the word innovation.
Sure.
What is innovation for you, and how do you think about imbibing innovation in your organization? How do you maintain the culture of innovation? Sounds like you're living that mantra in your organization. I'm just curious how you think about it.
It's a good question. So there's a lot of talk out, especially today, and this will date when anybody's watching this, but like right now, artificial intelligence is like, everybody's talking about artificial intelligence for everything. And there is absolutely benefits to it, right? Yeah. But it's not going to save us, right? And so I look at innovation as, how I would, I guess, qualify innovation is like when a new technology or a new process is able to be implemented in a way that is truly adding value to the shareholders. And I don't mean shareholders as people who own the company, but the customers, the end recipient, right? To where, AI has yet to find that. Yeah, and I'm not saying it won't, but so when we look at what innovations do we want to adopt as an organization, we really look to say how can we innovate or think differently about something, but it's not just to swim upstream, right? It's to do it in a way that generates outsized values to the input, right? So I don't look at innovation in the sense of we want to be innovative for innovation's sake. We want to be innovative to support the core tenets of who we are as an organization, and that's move things efficiently, reduce costs whenever possible, and provide the customer the level of support that we would want to receive. And if those things happen, then for us, we look at that's a good thing for us to innovate on. So whether it's a software system, whether it's a physical system, whether it's something as simple as a new conveyor system for the warehouse, right? It doesn't need to be necessarily a new piece of technology, but innovation to us is just as important as innovation in general. Now, on a broader scope, right, I think innovation in a community, a community will always play to the median of innovation, right? So if you've got a community that's always striving for innovation, people are going to be willing to make bigger bets. And you can see this, if you go to like Silicon Valley or something like that, right? There was this momentum where it was like, listen, even if I'm wrong 8 out of 10 times, those 2 times is worth it. Right. And I think what we're seeing, especially in Cleveland, is manufacturers, generally manufacturers, because obviously we're still kind of a manufacturer town, are getting smarter about this and being willing to take more, and I wouldn't say they're risky bets because they're, everybody has a different risk filter, sure. Right? But they're able to make bets because they're looking at more of the long game here. So we have a lot of small businesses, and I mean small businesses in the sense of, let's call it 40, 50 person, $10 million companies, right? And to have automation 10, 15 years ago was so costly for these organizations. But then there's been a bunch of groups that have come out, not only helping them in terms of thinking about their organization, but also building the confidence in the community around them. And a lot of it comes from the big manufacturers as well, the big supporters as well, saying like, hey, if you do this, the result is this. Yeah. And so when you have a community all focused on innovation in the way that allows an individual to maybe not lift something as heavy as they used to have to do it as bad, or breathe in something that was more toxic, sure. And all the things that we look at, those are ways that I see innovation positively impacting us as a community overall. So I mean, I think it's a broad question in the sense of, or I would say it's a broad question, but also it's a broad definition because it's going to be your perspective of it ultimately. Sure. And I don't think innovation in my opinion happens extremely slowly. And then we turn around and go like, oh my gosh, look how far we came. Right. Rarely are we going from like no electric cars to a road filled with electric cars, right?
What in your organization, who would you say does the innovation? Is it, first, would you say you have a culture of innovation? Mm-hmm. I mean, like, sure, speaking bluntly, and like we're not even on camera. I'm just curious. Do you have a culture of innovation in your organization?
I would say if we're not trying to push the envelope forward on a day-to-day basis, whether that's internally or externally with our customers, we would not be happy. Like as an organization, we wouldn't be happy. Right. And I think we try to attract people that want to do that. Yeah. And whether that's improvement internally or externally, or willingness to say like, oh no, we can go do that thing. Yeah. Right. Like even this building that we're in right now, right? Like this was never a thought in our mind that we were going to have a building of this size, of this caliber, of our ability to service customers at the scale we're servicing them, even a handful of years ago, right? But it's consistent people, whether it's Jason, whether it's Jason being like, hey, this customer came to me and said they need this thing done. Do you think we could do this? Or you have a customer service person saying, hey, this customer wants this thing. And while it might be one customer saying it, as a leadership team, we get together and go, okay, we've got enough noise in this area. Yeah. How is this something that we want to promote? And so internally, we always want our team members promoting or pushing forward innovation, not because innovation is for innovation's sake, but because we look at it like I look at it as almost like a duty of ours to be like, so few companies are able to execute on innovation and they're stuck either in the way they've always done things or they don't necessarily know where they're going. I'm a relatively young guy compared to a lot of the other people that are running logistics companies out there, to where if their window is 5 or 10 years, I've got 20 or 30 years, right? So innovation, like a payoff of innovation, can sometimes take a lot longer when you're looking at it for the span, to where for us, I hope that we attract people in a way that can think innovatively. And that's what like Delivered ultimately is. That's what a lot of these companies that have spawned off of Ark are, these ideas of innovation that have been able to take on a life of their own, take on organizations of their own and teams of their own, because it's not willing to just kind of settle for what the status quo is ultimately. Yeah. And so, I would say that from the top down, we try to have an innovative approach. And, sometimes that means you start things and you kill them, right? Sure. Other times that means you start things and they morph into something else. Yeah. But the starting is where I think we try to always be cognitive of when we're starting something, that we're starting something with a focus of the end result having to add value above just something new and cool we're doing.
I have a friend who described innovation to me as, first identifying friction and then eliminating friction. And so it takes an attuned eye and an ear to even notice friction? Because quite often, we're creatures of habit, and we do things a certain way. We're used to having a certain degree of friction in our day.
Yeah.
And we think that's normal. And then someone comes in and says, this taxi doesn't arrive 3 out of 10 times I order it. We need something different, right?
Sure.
So it's like, I when you think of it that way, then it doesn't seem so Silicon Valley or technology or Bitcoin. It's just about friction. Sometimes it's the friction in your shoe, right? Yeah. Sometimes it's some business process. So I love it, and kudos to you all. Obviously, with the growth and expansion of your business models, it seems like I would describe you all as an innovation company. You as an innovative leader. So my next question is, imagine you're speaking to a CEO of a company in France, in Korea, in India. What would you tell them? Someone who has no idea, what Northeast, Midwest U.S. looks like, what Ohio, what Northeast Ohio. What is unique in our water in Northeast Ohio and at the Aerozone that makes this a rich place for them to come and sort of plant their seeds in? What would you say to them?
Well, first off, you can drink the water here, but you can't drink the water everywhere, right? So number one is you can drink the water in Cleveland. We have Great Lakes; it's beautiful. Yeah. I would say that there's a couple things that, first off, when you look at the Aerozone and you look at the infrastructure we have with tech, whether it's NASA, whether it's some of these large organizations that have come to Cleveland, the infrastructure is here to pretty much support whatever is needed, right? So like if you go to some more Midwest towns, they might not actually have that infrastructure component. Whereas like even when you think about little things like the Federal Reserve, right? Like we have so many, like the banking systems, the hospital systems, the things we have in Cleveland that it's just like almost like what you would consider like it's not commoditized, but they're resources that allow for economic growth to happen. We have like all the core tenets and all the core principles of those here, right? Even something as simple as NASA, like it's such a cool company, right? Or a cool community in that, like the idea that we've had NASA on the airport here for I don't know how many years, but it cultivates this like idea to dream in some ways, and so the culture in itself has this rich history in taking bets, sure, but taking bets in a way that add value. And I go back to value because like Cleveland, I would say, is like even the Aerozone Cleveland, you've got these core tenets of like friendliness, like just genuinely friendliness. Like if you look up Midwest friendly, like it's not just a joke. It's like people truly treat people with respect. And I would say generally it doesn't matter race, culture, creed. Cleveland is one of those places where everybody is generally accepted for who they are, but more so what they can provide, right? So it's more on the tenets of who you are and what you can actually do for the community. And so that's one aspect of it. But I think maybe one of the more like subtle differences between the Aerozone or the Cleveland community is access to leaders and access to decision makers. So when you think of needing to work with a local leadership or a mayor's office or economic advisors, it's pretty simple to work with these people. And I don't mean simple in the sense of they just give you whatever. I mean simple in the sense of like you can get access to them. They're willing to work with you. They are willing to look at the holistic approach that you have as an organization, and it's not just check these boxes and we'll process you through somewhere. They want to understand what you want to accomplish and they want to work with you. And I think it's not just individually. So like obviously we have a bunch of different cities, right, and a bunch of different counties, but the counties and the cities work together really, really well. And this stretches not just, obviously yes, you have Cleveland, but this stretches in the other areas of Ohio where we consider a win, at least for me, I consider a win in Akron a win for Cleveland. Yeah. And vice versa, I would hope, right? Where it's about the region, it's about the infrastructure that one of these organizations can provide. So I would tell people that like, if you're looking for a location, if you're looking for an area that has, that's ripe, number one, that has the actual infrastructure around it, in the land, if you need something, right? We have a lot of land here, actually. Shockingly, we have a lot of land, a lot of places that they could settle. But also the ability to engage with local leaders that can also help with things like grants and help with opportunities out there that provide some sort of incentive for you to say, hey, we're going to make this our home. We're going to create 100 jobs here. We're going to do something like that in this area. So those are the things I would really focus on, because I don't think you're going to find the level of accessibility in those types of things, whether it's individuals, whether it's getting stuff, approved, whether, it's zoning or
Sure.
even things like funding that I would say are critical to cultivating that sort of business-friendly environment in Cleveland.
Yeah. To that, would you mind just sharing briefly? I know you all have consolidated multiple organizations and you've done a big move and you're in a new facility.
Yeah.
Would you mind just sharing briefly what that experience was like? And, big shout out to Jobs Ohio, Team Neo, and our
Yeah.
regional partners who
For
made
sure.
it all happen. If you could just, because that's a good example of how other companies who are looking to grow locally or come here could get a sense of how we as a region, we as a state operate.
Yeah. Yeah, so we were kind of stuck. We've acquired some companies. We were kind of stuck in this scenario where we had, I think, 7 different warehouses of varying sizes. We had growth plans. We had targets and strategy that required us to have a larger footprint than we currently had. And then obviously just look from just a income statement balance sheet, like, hey, let's consolidate. It makes sense. And so we had a mandate. And so we initially were looking, like we were located in right around the airport, actually. Like directly in the airport. We were looking for a place to build and all that sort of stuff. And along the way, we found this building that we're in, which is a little bit south of the airport, but still I would consider it in, the Aerozone community. And basically, we sat down with the local leaders and said, "Hey, listen, this is what we want to do." We sat down with Jobs Ohio and a lot of these groups, and we expressed to them what we wanted to do, and we expressed our desire to stay in Cleveland and stay in Ohio and not have to go out and look anywhere else. And I think they answered the call in a very real and meaningful way, which allowed us to consolidate our operations into one building. Did it in a way that helps support some of the infrastructure costs that were going to be related to that, and additionally allowed us to create the jobs in the community in a way that frees us up to make these decisions without putting stress or strain on the company in the short term. And then there's obviously long-term advantages to it, right? To where we have room to grow. I think we have 15 or 20 job openings right now, and to where our focus, and I mentioned this before, is like we've got this 20 and 30-year focus as an organization. So it's to continue to expand and grow as an organization, and we feel that the community, that Strongsville, that the mayors working together, Jobs Ohio, everybody helped get us here. Because it does take a community, right?
Sure.
We're not, a Fortune 500 who can come in and just demand things, but we felt like we almost got a little bit of that. It almost felt like they treated us the same in a lot of ways, and I think that's rare, right? I think that's sort of like that care is rare, especially if we were in, maybe a much larger metro area where we're not as we are right now. So.
Sure.
So yeah, that's how I'd look at it, is say, like, I think overall, the consolidation, like internal operations, right? That's a whole different story, but that even went smoothly, a lot smoother than we had initially planned. But I think overall, the process with Jobs Ohio, the process with the local municipalities and all the Aerozone type organizations made it much smoother, and then opened our eyes to other opportunities that we didn't even know existed, whether it's grant related or whether it's job creation related, things like that.
Sure.
So yeah, I would say overall it has been better than we anticipated. It was a lot smoother than we anticipated, and the amount of red tape that we thought would come along with some of the opportunities that were created for us were much lower hurdles than we initially anticipated.
Great. All right. One of the last questions is around, we want to get inside your head a little bit.
Sure.
A book that really stands out to you that's been influential in your life, or a quote that you try to live up to or, sort of imbibe in yourself. What, any thoughts there?
Sure. So I'm a religious individual. I'm a Christian. So the Prayer of Jabez is an incredible book. I would suggest anybody reads it. So that's number one. The other book that I would say is Influence, and I forget, I think it's Cialdini or Galdini he writes that book. It's a monster. It'll take a little while to get through. Yeah. But those two books are incredibly impactful in the sense that, for me anyway, because whether you're in your business, whether you're in your family, whether you're in your community, the ability to influence an individual or influence a community, it's extremely important to be able to do that, and to do it in a way that is authentic and not in a way that is just trying to be self-serving or get something.
Sure.
And so the book Influence is incredibly powerful. And then I just recently went through the 7 Powers. And I forget the guy's name's Herbert who wrote the book. I don't know the exact author. But the 7 Powers breaks down the strategy of how to look at your organization and how to look at your organization in the sense of innovation and say, is this allowing us to innovate, or is this just a bolt-on? It kind of helps you build a strategy around your organization, or even you could apply it to a community, you could apply it to anything. But really it's more of like a mathematical way to look at risk versus strategy inside your organization that can help define what the future of your organization should look like. And this guy was, the author has spent, decades analyzing how organizations go to market, how organizations consolidate or M&A process and the M&A process. But overall, the idea of being able to quantify a decision in a way that doesn't necessarily absolve you from the results, right? Because you're still stuck with the results,
Sure.
but allows you to quantify that decision in a way that that forces you to be truthful with yourself.
Yeah.
Because so often we can make a decision as a business leader that, if these 7 things go right, then it's great. And when they go wrong,
Sure.
This really forces you to kind of face that up front and actually graph it out to say like, okay, this is where it truly sits and it's going to cost this for us to do. So a good example would be, I know this is going a little bit of a round trip, but stick with me.
This is great. Yeah, this is great.
Apple is really, 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 really good at personal devices, right? They outsource all their hardware, so they're not a hardware company, right?
Yeah.
They're a software company, right? They're an ecosystem company. When they try to get into driverless cars or cars in general, it is completely divorced from who they are as an organization, right? And so the 7 Powers, if you were to graph it out, you'd say like, well, on the graph of where they should be going as an organization, what innovation they should be seeking, it is completely against the stream of how you actually need to do to build cars efficiently. You look at BYD in China, you look at Tesla, you look at even the GMs and the Fords of the world, right? Like they're focused on being excellent manufacturers. That's what they need to do. They need to be world-class manufacturers.
Yeah.
Apple has never manufactured anything. They outsource all their manufacturing.
Sure.
So when you look at this just from a standpoint of like a power that they have, their power is building an ecosystem, building beautiful products. And that's why something like a Apple car probably would never ever be able to happen, because it would take them to completely divorce themselves from their current organization to be able to execute on that.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming out. For sure.
I've learned a lot, and I walk away smarter, and I have to add a few more books to my reading library now.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Andrew.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Take
for
care.
what you're doing.
Thank you.
Take care.